Okay, let's dig into this. What if, like, a specific number, maybe 314159, wasn't just, math, but actually
Mhm.
meant something significant inside a big digital project?
Mm.
Because for the Pi network, according to some analyses we've seen, that number seems, well, it seems pretty important.
It definitely does pop up. Yeah, and some, let's say, interesting places when you look at certain discussions about the network's tech.
And that's really where we're starting today. We're going to do a deep dive into some recent info that's been circulating about Pi. We're pulling insights from a YouTube video, one that's breaking down an article by Damas Lawi.
Right. And this source material, it gets quite technical in parts.
Yeah.
Just talking about smart contracts, wallet technology, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it also weaves in these other kind of fascinating concepts like that number you mentioned and, well, some pretty big ideas about future value.
Exactly. So our mission here is just to go through the source material, understand the key technical points and these intriguing ideas it brings up.
And figure out what this source thinks that all means for the Pi ecosystem.
Right, and connect it all up so it makes hopefully a bit more sense.
Okay, so where to start? The source talks about smart contracts and this thing called atomic transactions.
Atomic transactions. Okay.
Yeah, the material describes them as being designed partly to keep an eye on what it calls fractional things, like specific bits or pieces within your wallet.
Fractional things, huh? It sounds like the system's meant to be really granular, watching even tiny movements of pi.
Seems that way, according to this. And the source also throws in that artificial intelligence, AI, is somehow built into this feature.
AI too. Okay. So what's the point of all this detailed tracking, according to the source?
Well, the stated purpose is secure and really detailed transactions. But crucially, it says this setup lets them track the origin of the Pi coins in your wallet.
The origin? Okay, why? Why does it matter where your pi came from? Does the source explain that?
It does, yeah. It ties it directly to this idea of potentially different values or maybe different advantages based on that origin.
Ah, okay. That leads us to the next big point from the source, doesn't it? This
Yeah.
idea of potentially two values for pi.
Exactly. The source claims there might be one value linked to what it calls pioneer advantages. Sometimes it uses terms like the Imzire-Jazify value or Sergify value for this.
Right.
And then there's just, the other value, the price it might fetch on regular crypto exchanges.
Okay, so the system described here is set up to know how you got your pi. Did you mine it, do the KYC, get it from the migration, what the source calls contributions?
Right. Versus maybe buying it somewhere or getting it in a trade from someone else who maybe didn't get it from those initial contributions.
That's the distinction this source is making. It talks about a special path that it says will not be interrupted.
Mm.
And this path is supposedly for the true pioneers, people whose pi came from those original contributions and who keep using it within the pi ecosystem.
And according to this analysis, that's how those coins keep their pioneer advantages, whatever those might be.
So conversely, if you get pi some other way, maybe off an exchange or P2P from someone selling non-contribution pi, this source suggests those coins might be treated differently. They wouldn't have those same advantages.
That seems to be the implication of this material, yeah. It sounds like a system designed to differentiate maybe gate benefits based on the coin's history, its lineage almost.
Interesting. Okay, quite a core concept there from the source. What about the more technical wallet stuff? The source mentions codes like BIP00032, BIP00039.
TIP 00001, yeah. Looks like standard crypto alphabet soup at first glance.
Totally. So what does this material say these codes are actually about in the Pi context?
Okay, so the source identifies the BIP code 0000032 and 0039 as coming from Bitcoin wallet standards.
Right, Bitcoin.
And the PIP code 00044 and 0001, it links those to Stellar's wallet standards. And it does note that Stellar's, part of the Pi ecosystem.
Okay, so referencing established crypto tech. But what part of the wallet do these codes relate to, according to the source?
So BIP 00032 and PIP 0004, the source connects those to what it calls hierarchical wallets for Pi. Now, usually we hear hierarchical deterministic or HD wallets,
Right, HD wallets.
which let you manage lots of addresses from one seed. But this source specifically uses the term hierarchical wallets and links these Bitcoin and Stellar standards to Pi in that way.
Got it. So something about managing multiple addresses from one main wallet structure. What about the other two, BIP00039 and PIP00001?
According to this analysis, those are about creating the wallets, specifically the process using those 12 or 24-word seed phrases we all know.
Ah, the seed phrase.
Okay,
Yeah.
BIP00039 is the Bitcoin standard for that. PIP00001 is the Stellar one. And the source says Pi is referencing these for its own wallet generation.
So putting it simply, what this source seems to be indicating is that Pi is basically adopting well-known secure methods for how you create and manage your crypto wallet, similar to what Bitcoin and Stellar do.
That's pretty much the takeaway from this material, yeah. Using established standards for generating your wallet with that phrase and managing the addresses.
Okay, now let's circle back to that number we started with, 314159. Where does the source say this actually appears, and why call it sacred?
Right, the source points to it showing up in the account path format code. It gets really specific, saying $313,000 and 159 was verified in the code way back on July 31st, 2021.
Wow, okay, breaking the number down like that within the code itself.
Yeah,
That specific.
very specific, as presented in this analysis. And yeah, the source flat out calls it the sacred number of the Pi network.
Sacred number.
It's obviously a play on the mathematical pi, right, the network's namesake. But this material gives it this, like, concrete technical place and this symbolic weight.
It definitely adds another layer to the whole thing, beyond just the tech specs. Okay, so we've hit the transaction tracking, the two-value idea, the wallet standards, the symbolic number. What about the future? What predictions does the source talk about?
Well, this material definitely highlights some very optimistic predictions associated with the Gias Lowy's analysis, things often discussed in the community. One big one is the claim that 10 pi will be enough for your life when the time comes.
Whoa, 10 pi will be enough for your life. That's a bold statement presented there.
It really is. And the source often pairs it with another prediction, that the 1 pi pioneer value, that SirGeFi value we mentioned, will be achieved.
Okay, and does the source link these predictions to anything specific happening?
It does. According to this analysis, these big outcomes are tied to the future, full launch of the Pi network node. The source calls the node the fundamental heart of the blockchain.
So this material presents these huge value predictions as like targets or hopes that depend on the core network tech getting fully up and running.
Exactly. It paints a very aspirational picture based on this analysis, especially for those early contributors, the pioneers.
Right. So looking back at everything we've pulled from this specific source, it's quite a mix. There's this deep focus on the technical side, the atomic transactions tracking origin.
The whole concept presented of maybe 2 different pi values depending on where the coin came from, contribution or not.
And adopting these wallet standards like Bitcoin and Stellar use, standard stuff, but applied here.
And then woven through that, you've got this recurring number, 314159, highlighted as sacred and tied to the code.
Plus these really ambitious predictions about future value shared in the material, especially for those true pioneers, and linking it all to the node launch eventually happening.
When you lay it all out from this source, you definitely see this interplay between building out detailed technical systems on one hand and articulating these massive future goals on the other.
Yeah, which brings us to maybe a final thought, something to chew on, based only on what we've discussed from this source material. Given how much technical effort this analysis describes going into tracking coin origin, into structuring wallets using these established methods, how does that groundwork, that technical foundation described here, how does it connect or maybe even clash with the really grand, almost life-changing predictions about future value, like 10 pi is enough for life, that are presented in the very same analysis? What does this particular blend of detailed tech and huge aspirations, according to the source, suggest to you about where this project might be heading?